Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back, everybody.
Please do subscribe and have that little bell click to both channels, EEARTS and also on Evolutionary, where each one has unique videos and still up on the air on where we're going to put this one.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just throw stuff in the air and let things fall where they may, I think they say.
Absolutely. We did this video March 23rd, 2018, and it had 262,123 views, so they say. That's, of course, before all the chaos with the plague upon the land and with the, suppressing of certain information that's gone on. And I was noting to Cindy, I said, oh, look at this video Pamela Erilyn did, because I know Cindy used to keep tabs on her and actually talk to her. So Cindy knows her. And that was before she was censored, and it was like 700,000 views. Now she's lucky if she gets 700 views. Mm-hmm. This is where you can tell what stuff is important in these times, with the suppression of information. But this was all about the pole shift speed increasing, and NOAA and the government issuing notification of the fact that your GPSs could be off because this pole shift was well underway and seemed to be gaining speed. And with everything going on in this world, we tend to forget about that. And many of us do. Others, are still focused on that. Many are just focused on all the chaos that's hitting us from every different angle. And we do want to thank our Patreons that are supporting us. You guys keep us above water, and also the support over on Ko-Fi. Medicinal foods, there's a link on the top of every video. Use coupon code EEA and it gets you a discount. Now, maybe this is surprising to some people. Maybe some people don't care. They wouldn't go see the movie anyway. There was a movie that really caught my eye, and this was a long time ago now already. And it was all about the return of the Anunnaki. Yes, the Anunnaki. That you always get this Wikipedia on. Oh, the Anunnaki, and other variations as you see the different spelling. They're a group of deities, ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians. Earliest Sumerian writings about them come from post-Akkadian period. And anyway, it goes on and on. Why in the world do they have to put the wiki on Anunnaki when they don't put the wiki on, say, the Greek Olympian gods? They don't put the Anunnaki on, different mythologies of any other sort, anywhere. But why do they have to put the wiki for Anunnaki? And this movie, it might have turned out to be cheesy, but still, the sight of something like that, it just kind of can bring chills to you. The Anunnaki movie was banned worldwide before being released. Why? In case you didn't know, the Anunnaki movie was meant to hit the theaters by 2006. But for some unknown reasons, it was actually dropped off right as it was about to be released. Everybody that was on board for the movie was taken out of the project. The whole movie was banned from ever being released. That's got to get you to say, there has to be something there. I mean, how could you not think, there's nothing to that? It's all the imagination of Zecharia Sitchin. Yeah, that's it. Zecharia Sitchin was a 33rd degree Mason. So, the whole story of the Anunnaki is just a bunch of satanic lies. That's what they want you to think. The reality is far different than that. So as you can imagine, a lot of people were waiting for it. They were angry to hear about this, as the producers stated that the reason behind the cancellation was lack of money. But the real reason as to why it was originally banned was far more complex than that. And then it gets into the whole mythos. Why would they stop this movie? Is it the man purse? No, I think this world is a lot more, it's got a lot more going on than just, hey, this guy's carrying a man purse. Far more than that. There's something there that they don't want you to know as you look at those charcoal black eyes that are, it's not too far off.
You know, those black eyes, they're a little bit reminiscent of good old, what's his name?
JB?
That's right. You know, when he gets up there sometimes, those eyes just kind of turn black, and it makes you wonder if, maybe there's some kind of an entity attachment possibly going on.
Ah, yes. Attachments. Absolutely. That really is something that more and more people are waking up to as well. Well, when we look to the Greek mythos, we see the Titans were the first pantheon of Greek deities. The mighty Titans were a powerful race that ruled the world before the Olympians, in a time known as the Golden Age of Man. They were the immortal giants of incredible strength and knowledge of old religion, rituals, and magic. They are also known as the elder gods, and their dwelling place was at Mount Othrys. In Greek culture, they were interpreted as personifications of the earth and of the sky or heavens. So, like, they're thought of as nature deities, so to speak. And, they did teach about the natural order of things, the natural way of things. And then when we have these other gods and goddesses that you might be way more familiar with, like Zeus and Apollo and Athena, they're very, very humanish, and they have a lot of humanity's what we might call less desirable traits and qualities, as well as they're often bickering, jealous, argumentative. They view humanity in many ways and many times as being something to manipulate, use, have fun with, even play jokes on, and bet on even. And again, it gets you thinking, if you're talking about that, then that might make you think of Job and the book of Job, and where Satan and God are having a wager. When we look between the Bible and Greek mythology, then your Genesis 6 comes more to light again. And many people will quote the book of Enoch. Still, when we look at the world's accepted translations of things, these translations have been handed down, again, written from the perspective of the victors. But we will find that there's a lot of interesting things in there. And the book of Numbers over here, 13, describes the land of Canaan as the land that devours its inhabitants. Ooh, it has giants in it that have a fondness for eating human flesh. Well, if you guys have been following us, you know that what we got about the Anunnaki is, and the Draco, it's very true. It's very true. And, you could see even in today's modern culture, there are some very, very diabolical, satanic, just disgusting references to these type of things that go on. You could also see, again, as we were stating, that your vampire legends are really based on these beings that we know as the Anunnaki. Very, very elitist, very, very aristocratic, and they feed off of humans. Humans are their cattle. Then when we have these legends of these cannibalistic giants, then you can see how this can go together, as they're generally depicted as being pretty big. They could be anywhere from, like 8 to 16 feet tall, would you say?
Mm-hmm. They are. They're big. I mean, they would definitely put any of us back on our behind if we were to see one of them and try to take in that kind of size and that kind of energy. So, it seems so unfathomable as we sit here in our basic day-to-day routine of humanity. But I can tell you, these beings are very, very real. They move forward. They stay out of sight. That's the most important thing. But I really believe we are going to have direct knowledge of them in this lifetime.
And then we have the wars in the Norse mythology, the war between the Aesir and the Vanir. And actually, there are many different species. Now, one of the things we have to start to recognize is, if we're going to define something, Well, if these beings are not from here, then by just very definition, they're extraterrestrial, because they're not from Terra, they're not from Earth. So these are extraterrestrial beings. And in many cases, yes, these beings are interdimensional as well. When you say spiritual warfare, what do you really mean? Well, you're saying spiritual. Well, what's spiritual? I don't know. It's not physical, right? Okay, well, what's not physical in this particular density could be physical on a different density, as if you were in 4D and you're having a conversation with somebody else on 4D, they're going to appear to be very physical to you. And depending on where Earth is in its cycle of the ages, again, the Greeks talk about a very similar cycle to the Vedic line of thinking. The Vedic yugas, the Greek ages, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and so on. We have these myths that are in agreement with each other. The labels change, but the myths agree. And again, you have these beings that are very, very human-like. And again, the Bible also even says, hey, God, created man in his image. Now, this is a vehicle. See, that's where the differences come. Like in the Golden Age, the beings that were with us, the beings that were around us, these other more benevolent, quote-unquote, gods, or extraterrestrials, if you want to use that term, aliens, if you want to use that term. There is actually referenced in the Bible that thou shalt have no other alien gods. There you go. And they're really, truly not talking about alien as in illegal alien from another country. They're talking about out in the skies, out in the heavens. This is the reality. And as far as the battle between the Aesir and Vanir gods, sometimes said that it began when the Aesir grew jealous of the Vanir's popularity among the human population. Although the Aesir received more sacrifices, the Vanir were well loved and began to demand an equal share. And so there's this conflict that ends up happening there too. When we go over to the Vedic tradition and the people of the Indus Valley, we see descriptions of wars between the gods, in which weapons that, in our mind, the biggest thing we could think of is nuclear weapons. And, these weapons probably even dwarf today's modern nuclear weapons in many ways, like the Brahmastra. And, of course, they're articulated as flying chariots in the sky, as, the people of that age, they didn't necessarily, either they didn't know how to translate it properly in today's modern vernacular, or something's been lost along the way in the translation, but the picture that is painted is one that is very clear. These are beings that had the capability of flying in what could only be called machines overhead. And some cases, yes, things that might be described as light body and or plasma. So the Brahmastra, the most powerful weapon of ancient Hindu India. And these battles between these beings with advanced technology were very, very real. And the scars of it are on the earth and in also the minds of the people of the earth.
Mm-hmm. And this is when we talk about our DNA memory, those weird things that we're afraid of and we don't understand, or traumas and triggers that seemingly come out of nowhere and we can't find a way to resolve them. So all of these energies are from these beings having some kind of interactions here on earth that brought trauma to the psyche, and then we just carry it on down into the darker Kali Yuga.
Absolutely. Even though technically we might already be like a foot out of the Dark Age. The Dark Age is collapsing, but it doesn't go without a fight. And there is a transition period. Everything in general does have a progression, a series of events that happens. So these benevolent beings that were here during the Golden Age, they teach humanity about how Source is within. It's all about realizing the self and who we really are. and understanding how the universe works. And there's Vedic texts that literally give you an accurate description of the Milky Way galaxy as far as its shape and its span of its distance. And it also speak of hundreds of thousands of different varieties of humanoid beings that live in our galaxy. So the benevolent beings taught us in a manner that they didn't expect us to get down and worship them, so to speak, but humanity does have that tendency. And again, if you were to beseech somebody that you had a lot of respect for, like say when you go before a judge, you respect the judge, you address the judge in a certain manner. Same thing with these beings. There's a respectful manner that is used. Yet when we look at the beings in the terms of, the Vedic terms, the benevolent beings are devas, and the malevolent ones are called asuras. And so the asuras act very differently. When they come to Earth, and wherever they settle, they take over, and they utilize the humans as slaves. And they also demand that the humans worship them, and the humans do sacrifices to them. And the sacrifices they demand are blood sacrifices. And this is where we get those traditions. There were a lot of Nordic traditions. The Vikings had many different traditions of bloodshed, and sometimes some of their best warriors would actually give their life and blood sacrifice so they could go to Valhalla, and so that the war could be fruitful for those that were still going to stay here on the 3D realm. And again, these beings, their preferred sacrifice was blood sacrifice. And they were to be feared. They were to be respected and feared, or else. And again, they demanded worship. They demanded the best of everything. When we look to things like tithing and giving, the first fruits and the best, this is left over from them. They demand it. When we look to the Vatican and the system that's in place there, with all the gold and all the wealth and all the hidden knowledge, this is their system. When we look to the Vatican, that's their representatives still here. When we look to the prime ministers and presidents, when we still see all these really what are people that come from hybrid bloodlines coming back time and time again and ruling, these same families that keep ruling in age after age after age, these are all descended from what we would call the Asura bloodlines in the Vedic terms. And again, this is a parallel with the mythos that we see all around the world. So when we look to the Ramayana, in which Sita, who is the love of Rama, is kidnapped by an Asura, a demonic being, taken to Lanka. The story is all about getting her back, and there's references to the Asura and his Vimana, his flying machine, his army, their weaponry. Again, it's depicted with an old-fashioned flair, but the descriptions are very, very different. And this is an article describing the different types of Vimanas in the Ramayana, as well as there were many different types, and we've touched on that recently. Again, it's all depending on where we are in the cycles. When we are in a more dark age, the beings that are in charge, the beings that utilize humanity, they demand worship. They demand sacrifice. Blood sacrifice goes on to this day in the manner of warfare. Why do you think we have nonstop wars? There's never been a year where there's no war on this planet in the last 6,000 years. Why is that? It's blood sacrifice to these beings. And again, they are in control, not just in the Dark Age, but also as we come out and as we go into. Because where's their home? Their home is literally the lower fourth density, the lower astral plane. And for those of you that have done anything into understanding the astral plane, that is the abode of all the hells. The demonic entity's home is just outside of when we're in the Dark Age. So what looks physical to us in the Kali Yuga, when we get into the Dwapara, there's a new set of beings that are going to appear to be as physical to us as you and I look to each other. You see your neighbor? Well, give it a little bit more time. Up, there goes one of the Anunnaki in the sky. You'll see them. Where did the ancient gods go? Well, we just descended into a lower density than they are able to easily manifest themselves in. They can. They understand how the universe works. They live thousands of years. That's why when you look to the Sumerian kings list, when we're in the Silver Age again, when we're up in the Treta Yuga, we live tens of thousands of years because our bodies are different. The bodies change. The vehicles change. And when the Satya Yuga, it said that humans could live to be 100,000 years old. And similar myths are found in the Greek mythology, in the Chinese mythology, and the mythos all around the world. This is something that's just been put down by the system that's in control now because they don't want you to understand their time's getting short. We're heading to the point where first, yes, as it says in the Bible, woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil comes with great wrath, knowing his time is short. That devil is the return of the Anunnaki out in the open. And from what we've gotten is that that's probably a little bit less than 20 years away.
You know, I mean, to understand this a little bit better, realizing that the light spectrum that we can see in right now is just such a thin slice compared to the light spectrum that is. And what is light? It's information. It's information that then form can be created and things can be tangible. So we're in that space right now where we're being able to perceive that lower fourth and higher densities too. So I think that's really important to note. We've gone from a space where people say, oh, I don't believe in ghosts, I don't believe in any of that stuff, to a space where a lot of people are coming online and they're realizing that they can perceive things and they can see things and understand things that never were before. And that information is, you know, they're suppressing it as much as possible because they want to keep their control matrix in order. And for us to be within that control matrix, we have to believe that everything there is to see is right in front of us and it's in 3D and it's tangible and that's all that there is. And don't even think that there might be, you know, something silly like an elemental or an entity or an ancestor, a ghost. Don't even think that stuff because, you know, if you do, you go to a doctor and we got pills for that. So they're in a bit of a pickle because we're perceiving irregardless of what they say. It's like we're breaking out of our shell. We're getting too big for that shell. The shell is cracking and ultimately the soul is going to expand out of it. No matter how much they just keep trying to push us back in that shell, we continue to break out of it. So yeah, they're in a spot right now.
Absolutely. And again, these are not my graphs here. This is looking at it as a sine wave. But this is all taken from what Sri Yugatswar had come up with, who was the teacher of Yogananda. So, you know, you could look at it as a sine wave too. And then when you think about it that way, that's the as above, so below. So it's very much like our DNA. I saw a comment when we were talking about the spiritual DNA over on EEARTS, and somebody said something like solar skin worship, idolatry. And I was thinking, oh my God, you know, can you even understand it? It's almost like inconceivable, the level of lack of understanding that is in this world. Because again, of the indoctrination, it's really very sad. But again, we wake up in some ways, We recognize the left-right issues. We recognize the politics. We recognize we can't trust the media, but there's certain things that people won't let go of. And that's okay. They're just not going to let go, and they're going to be still stuck. And, we do go through cycles of incarnations. And so, there are many that are going to be just kind of repeating class, so to speak, going back and redoing a particular grade time and time again. When in a sense we have a get out of jail free card by the natural progressions of what's happening as far as the changes that are coming through from, again, the magnetic the magnetic pole reversal, all the energy that's coming in from the sun. All these things are changing our DNA. The Earth's shields are down because we are also in a grand solar minimum. And we'll have to see to what degree that actually manifests itself as well. One of the biggest things about it, though, is that it's allowing greater changes in our DNA. It's allowing our DNA to heal itself, because our DNA has been tampered with and our wings have been cut. There are Chinese legends that say that the gods, again referring to these Asura, Anunnaki, Ijiji beings, and then the Ijiji are beings that are physical 3D just like us. And so, they can have offspring with us. When we are in, the age where the Anunnaki appear to be physical to us, they can also have offspring with us. Of course, they have other technologies where they don't have to do that the old-fashioned way, as we know now, and we could, conceive of now. That reality as well. So we think about immaculate conception. Well, yeah, you could have immaculate conception in a test tube. That's pretty, obvious now. That's no biggie. We could understand that, where we couldn't understand that just, maybe 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't have conceived of that.
Mm-hmm. Using words, different understandings. When Nostradamus was writing his quatrains, he didn't have the right vocabulary word for airplanes, so he wrote down iron birds in the sky, so you can understand how things have to be written in such a way where that person at that time can understand them. But yeah, there's a lot of different technologies that we know now that we weren't even aware of, 20, 30 years ago. Even though they were in use by the controllers, we were not aware of them. We were told that they were different things, and that, immaculate conception, and it's just silly, looking back to see how we have been strung along, like how they've held that carrot right in front of us and just kept us in the dark, no pun intended, but that's exactly what it is. We were in the dark, and now we're moving into the light of information, so you can see how they can't really hide that from us any longer.
And they have a very short window too, because the great solar flash, when that does happen, and again, we get that that's going to be about the mid-2040s, looks like it's probably 2046, 2045. That could change. It all depends on consciousness, depends on what's happening, and, when it's going to be triggered by the creator of this, universe. But that's going to change everything. And so, to them, this is toxic. They know how to shield themselves from this. They understand how to shield themselves from this because they've done this through many, many cycles. But any humans that are controlled by those technologies, if your body is controlled by the technologies of the Draco, Anunnaki, Gigi, hive mind control, the Borg, for lack of a better word, your body will not be able to handle it, and the vehicle will not make it through this change. And so then the soul will find itself reincarnating again in a very similar place, in a very same system that you want to escape. You'll find yourself in that same system again. If we stay pure and clean and avoid their technologies, don't allow ourselves to get bogged down in all the things that they have bogged themselves down, with, then we'll find ourselves in a totally different state of being after the flash, and we will actually be able to start creating that heaven on earth.
You know, there is going to come a time when these energies are no longer able to mingle, when the human body is just no longer going to be able to accept the kind of EMF energies that are out there. We're just going to, it's just going to make us sick, and we're going to have to be like literally separated from it. And that's what we're going through right now. Many of us are in situations where if you go into a certain place, you might feel very uncomfortable because there's probably EMFs going around that your body just cannot cope with, and it can literally make you sick. So more and more people, when we're becoming that sensitive, instead of just forcing our bodies into a cesspool of EMF, we're going to retreat into Mother Nature to find some comfort, to find some peace. And that separation is going to further continue to happen at a slow rate, but an obvious rate, because when you feel it, you feel it. When you need out of those energies, you need out of those energies. It's not like you can wait around. You know, it almost feels like your back's up against a wall. I need to make a change. So more and more people are going to be coming to that space. And that's just something we need to be mindful of, because those energies are due to separate, and not everybody needs to separate. It's going to be something that's called on the soul, and you just kind of know. You know when it's time for a change. You're not sure what kind of change that is going to be, but you know you need something different from what you have right now.
And again, that window of time from what we get, and what we get is basically they will be able to come here. The Anunnaki will be able to appear physical on the same realm as us, probably around 2040 to 2042, somewhere in the early time there. So they have about maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to do whatever there is that they're going to do here on the planet. Now, we can also change the consciousness of the planet to where they won't even come. If we can get rid of the system that's in place right now and change enough people, change their mindsets so that they're willing to not be slaves to the technology and to move into a new way of thinking, we can move out and past them where they won't even, come to take their harvest, so to speak. And other planets have done that. There are many more planets in our solar system than the ones we're told of. And there's actually a planet that's closer to us than Mars, and that's where the ant people of the Hopi legends come from. And these beings are on fourth density, and so at a period in time, they will appear very, very physical to us. And some individuals, just like with the Anunnaki, can focus and utilize their technology and their understanding of how the universe works to appear physical even in this period of time. And when we had all those world leaders going down to Antarctica, that's what they were doing. They were meeting with an actual Anunnaki at that point in time to get orders directly on how things were going to go, like presidential elections, when World War III starts, when they're to start everything that we've seen with the plague upon the land, and which series of plagues are going to come upon humanity. So when we look to the biblical tales and we see, and God sent a plague and 70,000 were lost, yeah, that's them. That's them. That's not the creator of this universe. The distortion is in looking at every word that says God and Lord and thinking it's the creator of this universe, because it's not. And originally, Elohim is the original word in the plural that's used. And then later on, there's translations that use Yahweh or Yod-He-Vah-He. Now, when you're seeing Yahweh, yeah, that's a clear reference to the Anunnaki and their whole system of things. And when you're seeing Elohim, there's a lot of distortion in there, as there are some older texts that are mixed in. There's old legends and myths that are mixed in with some truth, but it's all been distorted because, again, this is Satan's system. And, of course, it's going to be written from the victor's perspective. When we look to the Ramayana, And we have two beautiful books. One's a copy of the Ramayana, one is of the Mahabharata, that have amazing illustrations in them, and they're very large. And I would hardly recommend them for people that want to get into looking a little bit deeper into this in a light where it's easy to just enjoy. It talks about these celestial weapons. With these, you will be able to pacify, subjugate, and defeat large numbers of gods, asuras, gandharvas, serpents, and enemies. I will bestow all these divine weapons on you. Wow. You mean weapons that could kill gods? Weapons that could kill the asuras and serpent people? Interesting, is it not? Various readings and interpretations have been put forth over the decades about what it means for a warrior to possess a celestial weapon. In the Ramayana and subsequent traditions, we find certain sense of what these weapons are, what they do, and how they are transmitted, but it's not always clear what their mechanics are. These weapons appear to require invocation before their launch and have rather spectacular effects. What a weapon can counter depends on the deity it's connected to. There also seems to be a certain sense of responsibility attached to the use of such weapons. Some embody sentient or semi-sentient spirits or beings. The weapons themselves have intelligence or semi-intelligent beings associated with them. Others are associated with particular deities. There are weapons built for specific purposes for deities as well. And again, this is not even just limited to India. We're talking about Pakistan, and this is actually showing you over here, Thailand. There's a Thai version of this. These legends and myths do extend beyond what is known as India or Bharata. And so what distinguishes these weapons is the fact that they need to be received in a certain way. One cannot simply decide to learn how Brahma's weapon is wielded or create a physical form of the weapon. More often than not, a god or a person in possession of these weapons has to bestow these weapons upon the receiver. Further, simply possessing the weapon does not mean that one can pass it on as one wills. There are degrees of eligibility to what one can do with them. For instance, some are granted weapons with the ability to pass them along as they will. Some cannot pass them on, but they can keep them for as long as they like, while others can only use them once, before the weapon returns to the deity to whom it belongs. Although this transmission of weapons appears explicitly occasionally, it is in the background for many events in the Ramayana. Occasionally they are used as a plot point by later authors. The first occasion in which the reader sees such a transmission occur is in the Bala Kanda, when Vishvamitra bestows a series of weapons upon Rama. The moment reveals several aspects of the process of transmission and the nature of these weapons. Vishvamitra does not grant them the weapon as soon as they leave Ayodhya. He waits until Rama has killed Tataka, and the god asks them to give the weapons to Rama, who is a fitting receptacle. The transmission consists of the passing on of the formulae of invocation and withdrawal, which are received after ritual purification, and these weapons can be called forth and dismissed. Many weapons are associated with various gods, such as Shiva, Vishnu, Agni, or Vayu. There are some projectiles of various kinds, and others whose particular divine associations are not made clear. Some are associated with Gandharvas, which are magical beings, and Vidyaharas, semi-divine beings. Yet others are described through their particular functions, such as their ability to cause the enemy to sleep. When Vishvamitra begins to chant, these weapons appear before Rama, recognizing him as the one who controls them and expresses their willingness to serve him. At this point, Rama asks Vishvamitra how the weapons are withdrawn. One explanation offered seems to be that if only half of the process is known, the weapon does not return to the one after they have been used. Perhaps the most spectacular display during the war in Lanka, which is modern-day Sri Lanka, is Rama's use of Gandharva weapon that he uses to defeat an entire army all by himself. Indrajit. Now, Indrajit is the semi-divine offspring of the god Indra, and many have equated Indra with Zeus, a different category of beings. Now, there's these higher gods, and then there's these lower gods. And again, when you look at it, they're all basically extraterrestrial because none of them originate on Earth in the first place. And we are interdimensional beings ourselves, as are they. So Indrajit's use of divine weapons and the way he came to possess them is also described in detail. His weapons are displayed in the war as well as when Hanuman arrives in Lanka for the first time. This is one of the few occasions that they actually discuss the mechanics of the use of the weapons. As Indrajit frets over Hanuman's fetters having been undone. However, one of the things that seems to distinguish Rama from his enemies is that he dissuades of Lakshmana from using the Brahma weapon. The powers of these weapons that they bestow implies a certain amount of responsibility. One cannot use a destructive weapon only to serve an immediate purpose in battle. And again, karmic implications. But what type of weapons could these possibly be? And that could kill beings that to us right now would be non-physical. It's really fascinating to ponder all this. And the Devas, the guides, our guides, have told us again, these are stories. You can find truth in there. And they're given to us so that we can find out these truths if we meditate and ponder on them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Understanding.
There's so much there for you to go through.
There really is. And it is interesting to sit there and wonder, wow, these weapons, they sound so form-fitting for different things. But the truth is, people or entities, I should say, deities, different gods, they are able to give, receive, obtain in a very karmic sense where they change their frequency. And depending on where their frequency is at, will they be able to use these weapons? So I thought that was interesting because many times when there's a channeling and we put a channeling on YouTube, the views are just really horrible. I mean, they're horrible. But people have such a wonderful reaction to them. They feel so good and they make people feel so much better. And I've always sensed that maybe that AI can sniff out a form of frequency. And I think this just really confirmed that for me, that this is exactly how these things are made, used, given, taken, used, or even, not abused, is because they are bestowed depending on frequency, depending on what kind of karmic influence you have put out there. And we, as humans, we have a way, if we are doing mantras, meditations, of changing our very own frequency so that things might go a little bit better for us. And that's something that I recommend for people. If life is just really bumpy, start giving yourself some time for meditation, 1 or 2 minutes in the morning, 1 or 2 minutes at night, and watch how things fall around you. Things will start going a little bit better. But can you imagine this on a massive scale? If you had these abilities and you could really change frequencies depending on your breath work, your mantras, what mantras you might say. And with that, then you are able to utilize these utilities that they talk about. It's just incredible.
Yeah, Prometheus, who is a Titan, gave humanity fire, right? And when we look at the myth of Achilles heel. The only place that Achilles could be killed was at the heel, and that was because Thetis, his mother, dipped him into the river Styx. Now, the river Styx is the river that the ferryman carries you across on to the other side. So when we die, there's the ferryman that you would pay the price to ride his ferry. That's why they put the coins in the eyes of people when they died. It was, the coins to pay the ferryman to cross over the river Styx. Well, the goddess dipped her son in the river Styx. And so by dipping him in the river Styx, he couldn't die from anything except for that piece which she was holding, his heel. And so he was shot by Paris, and this is going to the Trojan War, which we have the modern day Trojan War about to happen here on Earth with, Troy being the U.S. and that Trojan horse is already within. But here we see another myth of these gifts of the gods, so to speak. When we recognize that there is truth, these are based on truth. But, of course, they're distorted because they're myths given to us thousands of years after they happen. The Kali Yuga is thought to begin around 3102 BC, and that's when Krishna is thought to have left the earth. Now, Rama was here way before Krishna, anywhere from 1200 to 2000 years. And some think that these are actually much, much older than we even realize. There are astrological signs that show that the Vedas had to be written 4,000 years ago at least, if not much older. Some say that they are going back far older, even before the Younger Dryas period extinction. So, when we look at the comparative mythology, and it answers all the holes in the Bible that are there. When you see a little brief blurb, there were giants, mighty men of old. Just read the rest of the mythology from around the world, and you'll see. If we keep reading the same little blurb over and over and over again, you're not going to get the full picture. Learn world mythology, and you'll start to see these stories are repeated, but there's more details in different places.
Mm-hmm. And one thing to keep in mind, too, is we're dealing with information that's from higher density than from we're from. So not all the same rules apply to where we're at. Therefore, when they or we are trying to channel information, or they are trying to give information, understand that you're getting it from a totally different realm. At least a 5-dimensional perspective, view, understanding, and you're trying to pull that down into a dark age where we really don't have enough vocabulary words to explain things. We don't have enough the right vocabulary words to bring understanding to what we sense, to what we're perceiving, to what we're grasping onto. It is so difficult. So you do have to allow for that, the understanding that this information is given to us to trigger certain things, and to trigger maybe even certain DNAs, that because we are from a higher density, trigger a DNA from our higher self. So there's just so much in here that is, you can read between the lines, so to speak, but really you're just reading from a higher density, trying to pull that down to a 3D.
Absolutely. And again, everything is so distorted when we look at it from a biblical point of view. And you could see, again, these there's an assortment of different myths that they are utilizing from many different time periods. And yet we can see that overarching Anunnakian mindset in so many ways, and distortion. Because ultimately, if we look to Revelation 22, every human gets a mark. There are those with the mark of the beast on their forehead, and then all those that are going to serve the day of the Lord, when the Lord returns, they get a mark on their forehead too. So everybody gets a mark, period. Everybody gets a cattle brand, period. And it's recognizing that. And again, when you look closer, well, what do humans do? Well, they serve their God. They serve their God. And what happens if they don't? Well, then again, the rains will be cut off, and it's the same old story. Humanity will go and suffer because they're not serving, their God. See, they will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads, just like cattle. Just like cattle, absolutely. So, why bring this up? Well, because again, this is another way that they trick people. And yeah, when you look to the day of the Lord, it's like there's even scripture that tells you, you don't want to see that. It's not pleasant. It's terrifying. It's scary. It's nothing to look forward to. So it's not the creator of this universe, because that creator is full of love and benevolence. But again, when you look to the biblical texts, you see there's a Yahwist text, there's an Elohist text, there's the priestly class that would, transcribe, and no vowels were put in the transcriptions. So again, it's amazing how you will have people that believe in these texts that have been copied time and time again, even without having the vowels in there. And they are channeled information, at least, if we're to take them seriously, then they really are channeled information. But then people won't think that people can channel in this day and age, and yet they're trusting the channeling that's given to them by the very power structure that is poisoning the skies, poisoning the water, poisoning the food, controlling the mass media, and they never think to question. Well, it's because it's fear-based indoctrination. And again, that's why there's fluoride in the water, so they won't be able to actually discern. That's why, the junk food is going to do what it does. And all the modern-day conveniences, same thing. It just adds up to that lack of ability to discern.
And even really care to a point you're willing to make major changes, So if we're still eating the foods that dampen our senses, the truth really isn't going to matter too much for us. We're going to think, oh, technology, it's moving more and more into our being as a people. Who cares? I think things got to move along with the times. You got to roll with punches. So, instead of doing something like, not getting a phone, or even downgrading on your phone, or just not allowing certain frequencies into your home, or staying away from 5G, people are just gonna move forward as if they have to tolerate it. But we don't. And if we do understand how bad that is for our DNA, it tears our DNA. It makes us so sick. That 5G stuff makes us so sick. And we don't have to tolerate it. There's things we can do. We might not be able to go get rid of that 5G tower, but you know what? We can stay away from it. We can get protection, or we can get out of range. And just, if there's stores that have that 5G stuff going in them, don't go in the stores. But if our senses are dampened, we're just going to go, well, we have to go with the times.
And so, again, when we look at that, why is some of the biblical translations saying Elohim, and some say Yahweh? It's the controllers and the revisionist history that's ongoing. So the Moola Mantra is a powerful one, and it's a beautiful one. Now, the mantras in Sanskrit are very powerful because they activate our chakras. And this is why we feel that they're just indispensable. And if there was one practice, and only one practice I could do, it would be mantras. Absolutely, over anything. And when we look at the Moola, it's a chant for seeking the living God to protect the chanter and provide freedom from all sorrow and suffering. It's said through this chant, the divine God manifests out of love and peace. The god or goddess then takes earthly form to protect mankind. And it is, in Sanskrit, Om. Om is the sound of the universe. Sat Chit Ananda, Parabrahma, Purushottama, Paramatama, Sri Bhagavati Sameta, Sri Bhagavate Namaha. And what that says is, in English, basically you're saying we're calling on the supreme power, the creator of the universe, the creator of all creation, who comes into my heart and becomes my inner voice whenever I ask. The Divine Mother combined with the Divine Father, I ask for advice at all times. Pretty simple, pretty pure, and yet very, very powerful. Again, because English has been devised to be the dominant language it is with a purpose. And you could just see it. Again, you write in cursive. Well, many of us don't anymore. Spelling. Did you learn your spelling? Good morning. Morning. Hello. It just goes on and on and on. The doublespeak, the negative implications of the language itself. That's why going to this, speaking Sanskrit, is like speaking in a language that's given to us from the golden and silver ages. So it's way more powerful, way more benevolent.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And, English language, it's just pure chaos. It's like deliberately chaos. I mean, some of the words, this is a oldie but a goodie, jumbo shrimp. Why do they call them apartments when they're together? A pair of pants. It literally is created to confuse. And then the words, how they're put together in the court systems, that's just, so you can bob and weave and basically do anything you want, not even just shy of murdering somebody. A lot of people get away with that now too, just because of the English wording, how things are worded. So this is more of a sacred text. At least you know what you're getting, and it is very, very, very benevolent. It will bring you a lot of peace.
And these origins come from the higher ages. Again, it's very different, and if we can develop our intuition, which comes with an active, functioning pineal gland, you just know. No amount of fear-based indoctrination can take hold in you when you know. It's just like, once again, once you know that your parents are Santa and the Easter Bunny, you could try to go back to thinking that the old way is the truth, but you just know it's not. And so you can feel it. You can feel it. There's such a palpable difference. And really, as far as the most peace I've ever experienced, it's been in doing these mantras and in kirtans, doing these mantras with others, dozens of others, sometimes hundreds of others. The energy that can be generated is pure bliss, and it's so beautiful and so full of loving acceptance. You just have to experience it. So may you all be blessed by the true creator of this universe and of the Divine Mother, who is the manifestation, all the manifestation that we could even perceive.
Indeed. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.